As you can see and probably hear behind me, Carb Day at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the 109th running of the Indianapolis 500 is rip-roaring and ready to go. As I'm taping this, the Weenie 500 is taking place on the track, something I never thought I would say taping a video at IMS, but here we are. It's an incredibly exciting, interesting, fascinating Carb Day here at IMS. We are now 2 days from the Indy 500. We're about exactly 48 hours from the drop of the green flag, and a lot of storylines coming into this year's race. We just finished up our final 2-hour practice on track with Josef Newgarden, our two-time defending Indy 500 winner, who will be starting 32nd on Sunday, leading the pace at 225.687 miles an hour. We'll go through the results. Takuma Sato, second fastest. He will start the middle of row 1 on Sunday. More on him in a second. Scott Dixon, third fastest. Devlin DeFrancesco, fourth. Will Power, fifth. He will start 33rd on Sunday. And then we go Felix Rosenquist, Elio Castroneves, Pato O'Ward, David Malukas, and Connor Daly round out your top 10 in our final practice. The bottom of the timing charts, Kyle Larson, 26th fastest. Scott McLaughlin, 27. Ed Carpenter, 28. Robert Schwartzman, your pole sitter, 29th. Christian Lundgaard, 30th. Kiffin Simpson, 31st. Alexander Rossi, 32nd. And rounding out the field of 33 in that final practice is Graham Rahal, number 33. And maybe that's a great place to transition. This practice is always incredibly important for these teams. They have had 3 days without any on-track action to speak of, where they could learn a little bit about their race cars in Monday's 2-hour practice that we saw after qualifying, tinker with some things, theorize, look over the data, maybe do some simulation work, and then come back here on track and test some things, see if it works, just see generally if the car is feeling good or not. And we saw some, it was 4 teams who were very, very thankful that we had this practice this afternoon. We had 4 mechanical failures, including what appears to have been 2 engine failures, both in the Honda camp, both in the Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing camp, and that includes Graham Rahal and Takuma Sato. We also had Alexander Rossi fail pretty early on in this practice with what I believe he told the Fox broadcast was a fuel pump issue. He said that someone will be driving down from Detroit probably as we speak to come and try and fix that and make sure that that is all remedied here in less than 48 hours. And then we also saw what appears to have been a fluid leaking issue on the back of Ryan Hunter-Reay's Ryan Reinbold racing car, and that turned into a pretty nasty fire that RHR experienced, could tell was happening right as he was on the north short chute. He veered into pit lane, stopped very early on, as he said, to try and avoid those flames and that dangerous situation, being close to any personnel that didn't have any fire retardant gear on. He was able to stop the car, get out of it all right before suffering any serious issues. But a lot of work going to be going on at those Ryan Reinbold racing garages over the next 36 hours or so to make sure that everything in his backup car, or if they're somehow able to salvage this car, are running in perfect order before we get to Sunday's race. Now, this is the first Pit Pass Live edition that we've taped since Sunday night, a very chaotic Sunday where we learned that Robert Schwartzman was our pole sitter, a rookie on pole for the first time since the mid-'80s, a first-time team on the pole also for the first time since the '80s. But we also had these looming Team Penske tech failures that we knew we would probably be learning a little bit more about. So let's get into that just a little bit here and sum up what we've learned in the last 3 days. So as we left off on Sunday evening, we believed that Josef Newgarden and Will Power would be starting 11th and 12th in the field. They their teams pulled their cars out of line after failing tech inspection ahead of the Fast 12. And we talked to Doug Bowles a little bit right before taping this, and he walked us through some of the facts and the timeline a little bit of all of this. We've since had 2 more press conferences with Doug Bowles. One on Monday afternoon, as he walked us through, despite telling us on Sunday night that there would be no penalties until after this race. He went to bed on Sunday night and said he didn't feel great about these cars in particular being able to start where they might have qualified anyways. If these two cars had just been 11th and 12th fastest in that Fast 12, that's where they would have started. So this he felt like didn't deliver an appropriate and stiff enough penalty, even though technically speaking, this is what the rule book asks for. It says if you fail tech inspection and there's no time to make an attempt, that these cars have already qualified and made it safely into the Fast 12. They proved that they were among the fastest 30 cars on Saturday, so they guaranteed themselves spots in the race, and they also made themselves into the Fast 12. So Doug and Penske Entertainment IndyCar took it one step further and decided to move these cars to the very back of the grid. They'll start 32nd and 33rd, as I mentioned, with those spots determined by their qualifying times that they turned in on Saturday. So let's start in that back row with Rinus VeeKay, who told us in a great line earlier this week, if you told me I was starting in a row with two Team Penske cars, I would have been pretty fired up. Not exactly the place any of those three drivers would have been expecting to start as they started their month of May, but nonetheless, that's where they are. As we also heard on Monday, initially, IndyCar had suspended IndyCar Team Penske president Tim Cindric, as well as the team's managing director Ron Rzucki. Both of those men serve, or previously served, as the strategists for Joseph Newgarden and Will Power. They were both the same men that Roger Penske and Team Penske suspended last year, along with two more engineers for the team's push-to-pass scandal. So neither of the two of them have been on a timing stand in the Indy 500 since 2023. Both of these entries were also fined $100,000. Their points that they earned in qualifying, by technically speaking qualifying 11th and 12th, were taken from them, and they also lost their priority in line in terms of pit box selection for this race. So that's what we learned on Monday. We heard reactions from a few drivers, a lot of frustration about what was done, and we started to learn a little bit and get a little bit more of a sense that this wasn't, or at least didn't appear to, if you ask most people in the paddock, appear to be a competitive advantage on these cars. Now, these cars haven't been put publicly in the wind tunnel for us to really test that out, but we've heard from enough drivers and team owners publicly and privately, along with Doug Bowles, IndyCar president, who we then talked to again on Wednesday, who asserted that he was confident in saying that these cars gained no competitive advantage with this seam that had been filled in on the attenuators. We learned a little bit more also about the purpose for that. These attenuators have changed a couple times since this car has existed, and going into the 2024 season, Dallara had mandated some support panels be put on the side of this attenuator. And so these new panels essentially jutted up right against the actual attenuator, so there was a little bit of a gap there, and it appears from what we understand that Team Penske sealed that gap up, sanded it down, and then smoothed it over so that it looked like one flat, shiny, solid, seamless piece, unless you got really close to it and took a really, really close look. We would later see in photographs from fans on the IMS and IndyCar media website that this modification appears to have gone all the way back to the start of that 2024 season. In fact, the car that's in the IMS museum right now, that is said to be the original car that Joseph Newgarden drove to victory lane in the 2024 Indy 500, as I saw with my own eyes, also has that same modification on it. That doesn't necessarily mean at that point that it ran with that specific part, but we've also since seen pictures that would point to that having been the case. So we learned on Sunday, as we learned on Wednesday, Roger Penske took this one step further. He went and fired his entire leadership team on his IndyCar team. So that goes Tim Cindric, who up until January of this year had been the president of the entire Team Penske organization. He'd held that role for well over two decades. He'd been a major leader on this program since he was hired in the fall of 1999. That also included Ron Rzucki, who'd been on Will Power's car for quite some time, and the strategist of Scott McLaughlin's number 3 car, as well as the team's general manager, Kyle Moyer. All 3 of them gone as of Wednesday. This team goes into the 500, all 3 with new strategists, 2 of the cars with 2 new lead engineers, because the car of Joseph Newgarden and Will Power have had their engineers promoted, 2 strategists, and then had some lower level engineers on the team fill in. So lots of chaos going around this team coming into the 500 as Joseph Newgarden tries to become the first driver to win back to back to back here. He will try to do that from 32nd. No driver in this race has ever won from further back than 28th, and the last 2 times that has ever happened in the Indy 500 came in 1911 and 1936. We talked to Joseph yesterday in Media Day, along with the other 32 drivers in the field. He said he still feels very confident that this is possible, and there are other drivers in the field who have said that they agree that 200 laps with smart strategy calls, with swift, error-free pit stops, and the car that we've seen Joseph Newgarden wheeled around this track all month long, that has been right up around the top of the timing charts. Everyone, or at least everyone that I've talked to in the field, believes that he has absolutely should still be considered a factor in this race. Scott McLaughlin himself was, at least publicly, the most upset about what took place. He said, in the end, he's a driver for Roger Penske. He respects and understands those decisions, but at the same time feels a little bit slighted in the ways in which some in the paddock and in the media have, what he said, blown this out of proportion for what in essence seems as it has been a cosmetic change to this spec part on the car, but it's a modified part of a spec piece nonetheless, and a piece that seems like it had been modified and uncaught for about 1.5 years now, and something that is supposed to be a safety device on these cars, and something that certainly we hope wouldn't have been the case, but if you start to make changes there, could have affected its ability to protect drivers if they get a rearward impact either from a car or backing it into the wall. So that's where we stand now with those Team Penske developments. Scott McLaughlin will start 10th, and again, Joseph Newgarden in 32nd and Will Power 33rd. Other things that we have seen in the last couple days here. This morning, Pato O'Ward got to milk a cow for the first time. He missed out on that opportunity, which is something that all rookies in the Indy 500 have done for years and years and years. He was attempting to be a rookie in the field in 2019 and missed the race. His first time in the Indy 500 field came in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic, and no rookies took part in that tradition. So these last several years he'd gone on. This will now be his 6th 500, and had not done that. And in his press conference during Media Day on Thursday, got to joking with Robert Schwartzman, who's of course a rookie and who took part in that on Tuesday, saying he'd never gotten to do it, he'd really wanted to, and some social media posts got rolling, and eventually the American Dairy Association of Indiana got in contact with the team, who was able to wrangle a cow known as Riri, or Rihanna, and Riri showed up in the IMS Museum parking lot a little after 7 o'clock this morning. Pato O'Ward made his way over there from his motorhome, milked a cow, and got an experience that he'd been long waiting for 6 years in the Indy 500. And according to him, hopefully will allow him to finally be able to win this race. I think Robert Schwartzman was the one that made the joke that no one has ever won this race who's not done that before, at least in several decades. So we'll see if Pato can pull that off. He will be starting on the front row, on the outside. His best starting spot in the Indy 500 that he's had in his 6-year history in this race, and I would not be surprised if he is leading this race by lap 1, and if Robert Schwartzman just falls back in the pack a little bit. I don't know how aggressive he is going to want to be, and I also think that there are drivers right around him who absolutely want to take control of this race, get a feel for it, see what their car feels like out front, so they can start to begin to make those necessary adjustments with their teams over those ensuing pit stops. Last topics before we finish up this edition of Pit Pass Live. I guess a big note, on Sunday, as many of you may know, we are hosting our final edition of Pit Pass Live. Is a 2-hour live show from Gasoline Alley. I'll be joined by co-host Charlie Kimball, who has run this race numerous times, last in 2020, tried to qualify for it in 2021, but Charlie has been around the paddock still since then in lots of different roles. He's a great experienced driver, a knowledgeable member of this paddock, and I'm really excited to have him join us as we talk to several drivers and members of this paddock with some guest spots, as well as just going through the field, talking about the themes and the storylines of this race and this month. And we will eventually get down to some predictions right at the end of that show. You can tune in and watch it on all of IndyStar's various social media platforms, on YouTube. I believe our parent company, Gannett, will be streaming it in some form as well. So hope that you guys tune in and join us for that. That can lead right into that Fox pre-race broadcast that starts at 10 a.m. Our guests for our show will be Kyle Larson, Tony Kanaan, Connor Daly, Marcus Ericsson, Mike Shank, Doug Bowles, and the 2 AJ Foyt Racing drivers of Santino Ferrucci and David Malukas. Really excited to get to our final major day of month of May coverage here at IndyStar and with Pit Pass Live, with this great show that we can bring for you guys. Hope to see you guys in Gasoline Alley. Say hi, wave to us. We always love to see your guys' support, and if you're at home or tailgating and yet to make your way into the seats, or if you're in your seats and you're wanting a little bit of entertainment before we get these major staples of the pre-race pageantry going, please tune in to our show again, Pit Pass Live, on IndyStar.com's various channels.